How's it going, guys? Andrew here with Justified EDC, and today I have another holster review for you. This is of the Hellhound Arms Guardian holster. This is a holster that I picked up, I'm trying to think how, it's probably maybe like 2 months now. Full disclosure, this was sent to me by the maker for a review. I had seen him kind of floating around on Instagram. Some of my buddies had started using his holsters, Scandy Sam over on Instagram and Offensive Industries. They both had started bothering me to check these out. So I had messaged him and asked him if he'd be interested in sending a holster over to review, and he was happy to oblige, which I really, really appreciate. I like to support makers when I can, but I only have so much money that I can spend every month. So I really do appreciate it when makers send me stuff to review. So thank you to Hellhound Arms for sending this over. I did not pick the colors. I told him to, do whatever he wanted. He said this is his favorite configuration, the pink Kydex with the black multicam Cordura wrap. So this happens to be for the Glock 17. He has this for a bunch of different models. This specific review is going to be for the Glock 17 with the X300. So your mileage may vary by, slight little things, but this is going to be the basic features of this holster is what we're going to talk about today. But before we get into that, we have to thank the sponsor of the channel, Auxiliary Manufacturing. Mike over at Auxiliary Manufacturing is making some awesome custom USA-made fixed blades like this Pocket Bowie right here, or this Sumi. He's got a bunch of different models. Just got back from Blade Show West, so there's going to be some leftovers from that show on his website. He's also working on another big drop, so be on the lookout for those knives. I do have a discount code with him. Code Justified10 will get you 10% off your order on his website. So if you're interested in that, I will leave links down in the description to his Instagram, his website, and that discount code. So check his knives out. Let him know I sent you. And thank you, as always, to Mike for sponsoring the channel. So let's get right into this here. Again, just full disclosure, I am not a, gun gear reviewer it's not my main thing, I should say. My main thing is knives and, other EDC stuff, but I do carry a gun every single day. 90% of the time it is this gun right here, so I do feel confident enough. And I've used a lot of holsters over the years. A lot of holsters over the years. So I feel confident enough saying this, but I am not, I am not military. I'm not law enforcement. I am just your average guy who carries a gun and trains with it and, wants to be proficient enough to protect myself and my family. So this is going to be a layperson's perspective on some gun gear. So, take everything I say with a grain of salt. Your opinions may vary, your mileage may vary. That's okay. This is just my opinion and my thoughts. So let's get right into this here. So the reason I picked the Guardian specifically for him to send me is, he has several other models. But this one specifically was very similar to the other holster I had been carrying in before. This is a traditional arms light-bearing jab holster. I carried in this for probably about 3 years. Great holster. I had very little complaints with it. And that's the holster I was carrying. So when I took a look at his website, this was the most similar to that holster. And, the reason I didn't go with something different is because I really wanted to see that, there's a lot of holster makers out there. And I really wanted to see, if, between one or the other, how much difference there can really be. Holsters, a holster is a holster is a holster. There are certain features you want on a holster. There are certain features you definitely don't want on a holster. But when you kind of get into, all the features that you want, every maker kind of does it very, very similarly. So, and I don't knock them for that. Everyone's trying to get everyone's trying to get paid. Everyone's trying to run a business. I totally understand that, and I'm fine with it. So that being said, I picked a holster that was very similar to the one I was already running to be able to better compare it. So your basic features of this are the mounting hardware you're using is a Discreet Carry Concepts monoblock. Again, I'm going to be using the traditional arms jab to compare it to because that's the holster I have the most time on other than this guy right here. So both using a Discreet Carry Concepts monoblock. On the traditional arms, they're just using some rubber washers behind here, and they do have a tendency to loosen up over time. Here he's using some, I believe these are probably aluminum washers, but they are metal washers. I have not had this clip loosen up at all since I got it, so that's one point of comparison. They are both using the Mod Wing concealment wing. If you're not familiar with that is, basically all it does is when you're running your belt through here, the gun has a tendency to kind of kick the butt of the gun out and away from your body. So if your body's back here, your belt is running across here, the gun wants to kick out, and that's what causes printing. You're trying to eliminate as much printing as possible when you're carrying, especially with a larger gun like this, a full-size frame. The gun has a tendency to kick out like that. So what that happens when that happens is with a wing, the gun kicks out, and then this wing presses against your belt and tucks the gun back in towards your body. So is it a necessary feature? I would say it depends on the gun you're carrying. I have some smaller frame guns that I do not need a wing on because they are so short, but it really depends on the holster. I've had some holsters for very small guns that do need a wing just because of the way it's designed. So it's very much your mileage may vary. On a full-size Glock 17 in a holster of this style, I prefer a wing because it prints quite a bit without it. So that is one of your other main features. The other is that these are molded for a light. So I carry with a Surefire X300 weapon light. And again, I'm coming at this from the perspective of someone who might be, new to buying holsters. So you gun guys that everything already, that's fine. You can skip ahead to the end for my, my kind of final thoughts. But for you guys that are just getting into this, just because you buy a holster that says it's for a, let's say Glock 17, if you throw a light on here, it's not going to fit. You have to get a holster specifically molded for the weapon light that you're carrying and the gun that you're carrying on. You have to make very sure that they are compatible with the holster that you're buying. Similarly, this is the X300U-B. The A has a quick release latch. This happens to have a wheel that you can kind of crank down on it. Now, both of these holsters say that they are compatible with both the A and the B. I had problems with the traditional arms. Is really one of my only nitpicks with this holster is that because it is cut straight across here and it kind of dips down right here, I occasionally had problems when holstering that the lip of the light right there and the wheel would sometimes get caught on the Kydex when I was reholstering, just like that. See how that gets caught up right there? It's not a huge deal, and again, because I carried with this for so long, I kind of trained around that, and it was fine. But one of the things that is different on the Hellhound arms here, on the Guardian, is while this is more straight cut across, this is cut at an angle, and the Kydex is just kind of coming straight out instead of dipping down. So on this holster, I've had no problems reholstering straight in. With the traditional arms, often what I would have to do is I'd kind of have to guide it in the same way if you're familiar with knife combatives where you kind of grab the tip and ride it along the back of the sheath and then put it in. I would often index the holster by getting the light in like this and then running the light in. Because when you go in like this, you're over here where there's more of a cutout and that wheel doesn't catch. So I'd often, especially if I was under stress and I didn't want to be fumbling to get my gun reholstered, you can kind of swipe it in here, index the light, and then go in. You don't have to do that on the Guardian because of that cutout. You can go straight in, which it makes for much more consistent drawing and reholstering. Again, another thing you're going to want to look for on a good holster is that the clip rides low enough on the holster that it's going to put the frame of your gun high enough above your belt line to get a full firing grip from the draw. So what do I mean by that? Well, the top of your clip is where the top of your belt is going to run. So if a lot of holsters run the belt clip way up high, and so picture the top of this clip now sitting, somewhere up here, flush with the top of the holster. Well, that's what's going to be exposed on the top of your waistband. So you're not going to be able, you don't have all the space in here to get your hand in here and draw the gun. You're going to be kind of digging into your waistband, and your draws are going to be much more inconsistent. both of these holsters, but especially because we're talking about the Hellhound arms, they have the clip mounted in such a way that that is what's going to be sticking up above your waistband. So there's plenty of room, you know, up in this area for you to, you know, again, if we're covering that, that's what's going to be sticking up. You can get all the way in there. You can get your fingers in here and get a full master grip, full firing grip right out of the holster. That does that very well. The other thing you're going to want to make sure is that, you know, one of the primary purposes of a holster, other than, you know, just, you know, carrying your gun, is protecting the trigger. For those of you who aren't familiar, things like Glocks and, you know, your Glocks, HKs, Smith & Wessons, CZs, any of those what we call striker-fired pistols, have a rather short trigger pull where there's not a whole lot of weight that is required to break that trigger, and a lot of them don't have a safety, which is okay. You know, you have a little bit of that, you know, trigger safety down here, so, you know, it's not going to get pulled right away. You know, if that isn't pulled, it's, you know, I don't have to explain a trigger safety. I'm pretty sure most you guys know what that is. But, you know, you want to make sure that your holster is covering your trigger guard, because it is not safe to carry with your trigger exposed down inside your waistband. So, you're looking at it from the top here. Yep, it's all covered up. Now, again, with a light-bearing holster, it's going to have a little bit wider of an opening. I've seen people complain about this before of, oh, you know, when you put the gun in here, you know, there's all this space around here that should be closed off. Well, if you're carrying with a wide weapon light like this, the Kydex can't magically reform around that. It has to be open to get the light all the way down into the holster. That being said, it should be closed off enough up in here that you can't accidentally get your fingers down into that, you know, part. If I am trying my absolute hardest, I can barely even touch the trigger, let alone pull it. And so my rule of thumb is that if I can't pull the trigger on purpose in a holster, that there's probably zero chance that it's going to, you know, go off by accident. So that's something you want to look for, that the trigger guard is completely enclosed. Some of the other features here, you have a sweat guard in the back. All that really does is protect the slide of your gun. You know, depending on what finish your gun manufacturer has, some of them are more prone to rust than others. And since this is riding up against your body all day, a sweat guard is just going to protect your slide from rusting. This happens to have like a half sweat guard. The traditional arms has a higher sweat guard. I prefer the lower ones. One, because, you know, I haven't really had any problems with the Glock slides rusting during carry. But also, once you have drawn the gun and, you know, you're moving and shooting and, you know, bending and stuff like that, having, you know, that piece of Kydex still sticking up, often, you know, when you're bending over or shooting from weird positions, that tends to dig into you. So the shorter sweat guards don't tend to poke you as much, but that really is personal preference. Some holster manufacturers, you have an option of the height of the sweat guard. So if you see on a holster website, it says sweat guard height, and it says low, medium, or high. This is probably about what you're going to see for a medium. This is probably about what you're going to see for a high. And then low would be, you know, probably cut down to like here, where it's really not really much of a sweat guard at all. So that's another one of the features. Another one of the features of this is that it is optic cut. Now, I'm not running an optic on my gun. I've gone over why in the past. You know, I have nothing against pistol optics. I just genuinely haven't had enough time behind them to be confident carrying one every day. I run optics on all my rifles. I have shot pistol optics before. I understand the advantages of them. They're great. I one day will probably transition to a pistol optic, hence why I buy holsters with optic cuts. But for the time being, they are not... I'm not running an optic. But that being said, being optic cut on a holster just means that the spot up here on the slide where you would normally mount a pistol optic is exposed. So if you had a red dot that, you know, that was sticking up this far, you know, the Kydex isn't going to impede that. It's the same thing on the traditional arms. Most holsters nowadays just come optics ready because so many people are running dots on their guns. But, you know, if you happen to see on a holster website when you're ordering it that has an option to be optics cut, that's all that means, is that that part of the slide is going to be exposed. you might as well get it, because if you ever end up transitioning to a dot someday, that way you don't have to buy another holster. One of the last features that I wanted to point out on this is that this has a Cordura wrap on it. So the pink is the Kydex, and then it actually has this like fabric overlay on the outside. Now, that was another reason I was interested in Hellhound arms, is because I had never had a Cordura wrapped holster before. All my holsters before had just been, you know, you're playing Kydex. I really just thought it was an aesthetic thing, which that is a big thing. A big reason why people get Cordura wraps is you can get really cool camo patterns and splatter colors, and, you know, it's fun to customize your holsters. I get that. But there are a couple minor advantages. I wouldn't say that they're really major. You know, it does cost extra to have Cordura, which we'll talk about at the end here in terms of pricing. But there are a couple minor advantages. One is that it is minorly heat and moisture wicking. I noticed that when I was carrying with this versus this, you know, it's going to be a little awkward, but, you know, down in your crotch area where this gun is sticking, when I was carrying with this versus this, it was much less hot and damp when you are carrying with a Cordura wrapped holster. The other thing is it does provide some friction so that your gun is less likely to move. You know, the monoblocks do a very good job of stabilizing the gun in terms of getting a consistent draw. But the Cordura does add, you know, I had heard some people say this before, and I was like, there's no way it actually makes any difference. You know, just that little bit of friction, there's no way. But it does. It really does help cut, you know, that little bit of friction, you know, between your body and your pants and the belt and everything. That little bit of friction does kind of just help it keep it in more of a stable position so that your draws are more consistent. Is it, you know, a absolute must-have? No. You can absolutely still get consistent draws with this. The most important thing is that you dry fire and you train. That's what's going to give you consistent draws. But if you are already good, this might help it a little bit. And on top of that, it's just the cool factor. It does look very, very nice. It feels nice. It looks cool. I was trying to find some nitpicks to give this, and really I don't have any, because it really just kind of seems like a better version of the holster I was already running. And I love this holster. There's nothing wrong with this. You know, I still really like Traditional Arms as a company. And if you got one of their holsters, I don't think you'd be, you know, setting yourself up for failure by any means. It's a great holster. Like I said, I've been carrying this for years and it's held up great. The advantages of this, I think, are going to be enough for me to transition to carrying this. I'm pretty sure, you know, I've carried with this pretty much every day other than since I got it, other than when I've been testing other holsters. I've just been coming back to this because it is so comfortable and easy to carry. So in terms of the price, the Guardian holster itself, depending on you know, the configuration and the colors that you're choosing and whether or not you're getting a Cordura wrap, the price starts at $80 and can go up to $140. The configuration I have here would cost you $120. It's the base price is $80, and then if you add a custom patterned Kydex, that's an extra $20. And if you add any of the Cordura wrapping, it's an extra $40. So if you didn't want the Cordura and you were just getting a solid color Kydex, this is actually cheaper than this. I believe these run around 100, and these are running at 80. So you're getting all of the same features, and honestly, if you're running an X300, I can't speak for other weapon lines, but if you're running an X300, this cut here is actually an improvement over this. So for $80, that's really, really great. I know a lot of people, you get really upset when I talk about holsters that are around the $100 price point. It's a life-saving piece of equipment, guys. And, you know, once you find a good one, you probably aren't going to have to replace it ever. And if you do, it'll probably be years down the road. I think, oops, sorry, I hit my printer over here on the other side. It's a piece of life-saving equipment. It's the same dumb argument I hear people make of, oh, you know, why would you buy a Glock for $500 when you could buy a, you know, PSA dagger for $200? It's like, well, yeah, it is $300, and that's not an insignificant amount of money, especially in today's economy. However, you know, you want something that you are trusting your life and possibly your family's life to be reliable and to work and to not fail you when you most need it. So in the same way where I'd say, you know, spend a little bit extra and get a gun that you know is going to be 100% reliable, I would say spend a little bit extra. You know, you can get very cheap holsters, you know, for anywhere from $30 to $50, and they might work fine, but they also might not, and they are definitely not going to have these features. So I think spending anywhere from, you know, $100 to $150 on a holster, I see that as a worthwhile investment as long as you are investing in good features and good build quality. Because again, not only is this the thing that, you know, you're going to be carrying your gun around in all day, and you're going to rely on it to, you know, reliably retain your gun. You're going to have it reliably, you know, keep it in place to get consistent draws. You're also trusting that it's going to protect your trigger so that you don't have a negligent discharge and seriously injure or kill yourself. So, you know, you can get very cheap holsters. Maybe they'll work, maybe they won't. But for me, I don't think that $100 to $150 for a quality holster that you are going to use all the time is outrageous. I think that is a very reasonable price. And, you know, you can argue with me in the comments, that's fine. But you're wrong and I'm right. So, and it's my channel, so I get to say what I want. But all that being said, this is a great holster. He has another model. It's very similar to the Guardian, but it's using two single DCC clips. And he said that one is even more stable in terms of, you know, moving around on your belt. I've always used the monoblock and found them to just be just fine, and I think the monoblock is easier to get on and off than dealing with two clips. But I might try that down the road. But all that being said, the Guardian is a fantastic holster. Hellhound Arms is a great company. He's a great guy. So thank you to him for sending this over. I will also link to the traditional arms holster because, again, I think it's a great holster, and I've been using it for years now. There's nothing wrong with this. So I will link to both of these, but definitely go check out Hellhound Arms. Let him know that I sent you. All the links for everything I talked about will be down in the description. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or you want to yell at me for talking about expensive gear, leave that down in the comment section. And as always, I will talk to you guys in the next video.